with more patients to get to and services struggling to keep up. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
Now, Spain is planning to introduce medical leave for women who suffer from severe period pain, media reports say. Now, a draft bill says women could have 3 days of leave a month, extended to 5 in some circumstances. If passed, it would be the first such legal entitlement in Europe. It's already allowed in countries like Japan and Indonesia. Well, Bex Baxter introduced menstrual leave to her enterprise, Coexist, in Bristol back in 2016. Good evening to you.
Hello there.
So you've been doing this for a few years now. Why did you want to introduce it?
So I myself suffered from dysmenorrhea, which is a condition where women experience quite intense cramps. And I had that for a good 25 years of my adult life. And that wasn't an issue. It didn't initiate the policy until I saw one of my members of staff bent double and didn't want me to acknowledge that there was something wrong because it was their period. And it sort of woke something up in me, kind of a human rights issue that needed to be addressed. And we were quite a forward-thinking, open organisation. So I brought it to the directors and they were really open for me to explore it.
And you've obviously been doing it for a while and it clearly works there. Are there any challenges that it does throw up?
I mean, yeah, there was a huge backlash because the policy was probably one of the first in the West that got kind of recognised. And so it went on international media and there was a huge backlash mainly and understandably from women, more from the women than it was from the men. And I think that came from the idea that this was the stigma was a real concern for women around promotion, around being seen as weak and all of these different things. So our response to that and our response to our team was very much creating a very bespoke menstrual policy that was a flexitime policy. And that there was an allowance of 1 day paid menstrual leave if women wanted to take it, if they opted into the policy. But it also allowed women a number of different choices. So they could maybe go to a quiet room or use the wellbeing space, or they could work from home. But it depended on the departments because each department had a different team and different requirements. But one of the key elements...
Yeah, no, go on. Yeah. Carry on.
Just to say, one of the key elements of the policy wasn't just the organisation just adapting. It was also asking the women to be responsible for their menstrual needs. So asking them to educate themselves and learn to track their cycles so that they could learn what their patterns were and they could therefore take time off and put it back in if they wanted to. And this really mitigated the stigma for a lot of the women in Coexist.
I see. And given those, that's quite an interesting level of kind of nuance and flexibility you were talking about there. Do you think every single business can introduce something like this?
I think it's not one size fits all. It's not one size fits all for an individual, and it's not one size fits all for an organisation. It's an inquiry. And my recommendation to organisations is to talk to your staff and find out what their needs are. I think this is key, that equality isn't about being the same as men, which is what a lot of the concerns are from women. It's about valuing difference. That's what equity actually is. It's about creating the conditions and the resources that allow people to optimise their well-being and happiness in the workplace.
And do you see, lastly, before I let you go, not clearly that you would like to see businesses across Europe have something similar to what you've set up, but do you think it's actually going to happen? Do you think it's likely?
I think what Spain has done is incredible, and I love that they're acknowledging, especially women that suffer with quite intense symptoms, so dysmenorrhea, endometriosis. There's even something called PMDD, which isn't very known about. And you know, some women do really suffer and it's really important. But what I found was once the policy was in place, when I went home and what other members of staff fed back was that the permission field of being allowed to rest when they had their pain or their experience of menstruation, it actually reduced. And I know this for myself, I can speak for myself, that my symptoms are much more reduced. They're not stressed, which intensifies them, where you're feeling shame or wanting to hide it or not wanting people to know because you don't want to be stigmatized.
OK, Bex Baxter, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the programme.
Thank you so much.